episode 206 of View from 202 after another rocky home result for the Red Bulls, this time a 2-1 loss late to the Montreal Impact. It's the four of us per usual, and to be honest with this, I'm not really looking forward to talking about this one. I'm kind of eager to just kind of move on a bit.
We
said the same thing before you got here.
Yeah, and we can get through, I think, the meat of it, because there's, I feel like, not much to talk about.
Well,
I'm only going to away games now.
A lot to talk about,
forward.
which is I'm just not excited about that. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's not a lot to talk about.
I think it's like pretty straightforward what happened, you know? It's like,
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I think we'll find a way to tease it out more, but yeah, if only we can figure out a way to have only the away support in the stadium, then we'll go undefeated.
you're really hyping up the rest of this episode.
How so?
Just, you know, we're really looking forward to talking about, you know.
I mean, that's kind of, I feel like, how every episode goes a bit, you know? I mean, you know who did pull off a massive win, actually, is ASC GeoGuessr. Finally pulled one out. Unlike the Red Bulls. They should take some notes.
It's really quite the opposite. How ASC GeoGuessr pulled through, I thought, compared to the Red Bulls. That's a very good point. It's like almost exactly what the Red Bulls should have done.
Yeah, you would never see the Rebels make that kind of basic communication error on the back line. I mean, the ASC GeoGuessr would never make that kind of error.
Never.
No.
But
yeah, it's a tough one. It's an annoying one this week. It's so we of course had Frankie Amaya out by suspension because his appeal was unsuccessful. Which personally, I find not surprising. I think, as we discussed last week, it was sort of just a second yellow, even though the ref was kind of being a tight ass. In his place came Christian Cáceres Jr.
Cork, take that one away.
Lo
I
and
feel like you've
behold.
been salivating about seeing CCJ in the deeper midfield role.
I mean, yeah, I said last episode that if only for scientific reasoning, just to see how it looks, I've wanted to see Christian Cáceres in a deeper role. And honestly, you know, I mean, I guess the global theme of discussing this game will be failure, which it was, but I don't think Cáceres was really one of the main culprits. I thought that for the most part, he had a good game and was a big part of the reason that Montreal did not beat us in maybe the traditional way that they wanted to. The way they play, I thought Cáceres was aligned with Mihailovic most often out of any of our, you know, midfield players, and was very, very good on that side of the ball. You saw exactly what you expect to get out of Cáceres, which is kind of dogged tackling, just kind of that low center of gravity, and just, you know, constantly harassing guys and, you know, hitting them in tight spaces. And then, you know, when he was getting the ball, he, you know, as compared to even Frankie Amaya, because, you know, that's not a knock on Frankie Amaya because he has kind of a different game. He was better than Amaya at kind of facilitating switches and shifts in direction on the.
Okay, I mean, I just like I feel like.
All
that's,
right, go ahead.
No, yeah, I just I agree with you that Christian Cáceres Jr. this time wasn't at fault for us losing, but I don't think he was like, you know, contributing us to potentially winning at any point. He consistently made like the most boneheaded decision every time we were in transition. Like there were multiple times where he was like, you know, there were runners coming on that we could have had the overload, and he takes a shot from like 30 yards wide, or he, you know, he gets into transition. He does have like a shot open that he can take and no men around him, and then he tries to get a layoff going. It was just a very frustrating, like, I feel like holding midfielder in that kind of transition sense, and that's very important for, I thought, the way that we were trying to play that game.
I disagree, but thank you for finishing my thought for me, I guess.
The only thing I noticed was that he and Morgan had a little bit of miscommunication. I think.
I think Morgan was really the failure though. Of this game.
I think he looked like pretty frustrated during the game. I think even with CCJ with some passes, and I think that kind of speaks to your point, Peaches. But I did think that as a defender and shutting down the creative midfielder, what's his name, Mihailovic. Yeah.
Georgie.
I thought he did a pretty good job of that, especially in the first half. Like just like non-existent.
He was definitely disruptive, but it's just like, like a good midfielder in the way that we play is disruptive and also like facilitates that transition. I don't think he did that very well.
I think he was pretty effective. I think it was striking. It was bizarre to see him play in his natural position again and go, oh yeah, the management on some level is aware that he can do this. It's like, lo and behold, I might be just plagiarizing one of Cork's tweets, but like, lo and behold, he like appears to be a natural at pinging long balls and switches across the field and laying back and have a more reserved visibility or vision of the field. And this is his first time playing here for the team for a while, so it wasn't perfect, but I think it's like, yeah, this makes infinitely more sense than throwing him up there as a second striker or whatever. Because I think the shortcomings that you're describing, Pete, just sounds much more like how he plays when he's a second striker, and being able to serve as like a six or sort of pivoting with Drew. Like, it was much more intuitive, and I think it did. Was he the reason why we controlled the game? No, but I think he did definitely slot in. I mean, it answers the question for me, like, who's our second choice at this slot when Frankie or Drew go down after this week? I'm like, oh yeah, it's clear it's CCJ full pro, rather than Edelman, who's still cutting his teeth as a first team pro. Or maybe some other option I'm forgetting, like Carmona, I guess. I think it's like, I feel relief being like, he can still do this, and it makes more sense than when he's a striker.
No, actually, it just sucks. Peaches sucks. So.
I think he makes more sense as someone who's a little further up, because I think the problem that he has, specifically when he plays further back, is that he has a lot more time on the ball, which obviously happens if you're playing like deeper in the midfield, and then he has like time to make a decision. And I think he's much better when he's not making decisions, because he makes, as I was trying to like point out, the wrong decisions. But I don't think he was a liability necessarily. But to your point, that as a science experiment, I'd also like to see Daniel Edelman have a start at this point, just to see what's on his things, to see if I don't know what's in his wheelhouse at an MLS level start either. But
yeah, I mean, if you're doing like for comparison with the Maya, I think the one thing that you are maybe even talking about with the Maya is that he does these really good, I think, short passes and like some build up like that when he pushes through the midfield.
He plays very progressively in like a quick sense. Like, he plays quick.
I think he does.
If we're going to be on this topic now, I'll finish what I was saying, which was that Amaya carries the ball a little more. That's where most of his threat has come from. He's not as intuitive or clean on kind of switching play and hitting long raking balls, and seeing that out of CCJ, even if it wasn't perfect, like you're saying, was, as from a purely formational and tactical sense, very interesting to see.
I think the thing about CCJ is that, and this is kind of one of those things I don't really think you can judge, but like, I don't get a sense that he has like a good game sense and like sense of like where the game is, how to play in that moment or in that game state. I feel like what you were saying, like Morgan was very frustrated with him a lot. I think it's because I just like, he's not in that right moment, and maybe that's a thing that might come with chemistry in time. But I think what we've seen from CCJ over these years is maybe this lack of kind of this awareness that is a little bit more intangible, and that's my frustration with CCJ.
I'm talking about what I saw on the field. I'm not reading anybody's mind, but yeah.
I mean, that's like indicative of like what's on the field. Right?
Where does he play when he's like a national duty?
As a defensive midfielder.
Okay.
More like 6
like
or
an
8.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, I think like as an 8 box to box makes more sense to me.
It's that it's just glaringly obvious we're playing. I mean, I think we're playing him out of position when we throw him up in the, as this like kind of attacker that does nothing for 85 minutes, but there's like those 5 minutes where he like kind of wakes up and then has like some sort of attacking play, like a good shot, could be even a goal, but like he's kind of just like
he's
just
not
like
a fluid part of any attack.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, he's not a fluid part of anything.
To the extent that he lacks
Well, he's
awareness.
more fluid when he's playing in a more intuitive position.
Yeah.
deeper,
That's totally
is what
disagree.
we're saying.
I just disagree.
Well,
To the-
thanks. You've more than expressed that.
To
Right.
the extent that he lacks awareness, it is so much worse when he's playing further up the field.
But it's like less of a like, you know, it make like it's you can be that, like you can
No.
disrupt the play when you're an attacker more. You know,
It
it's like
disrupts our own play.
yeah, you know, it doesn't
Do you
affect
remember-
kind of the overall
It's an old
tempo
here's
of the
a
game as
RBNY
much.
history story. It's going real back, like olden times, not quite Metro Stars, but there was a game against the Columbus Crew where CCJ was subbed onto the field to play a sort of attacking second striker position, even really maybe just one of the strikers, and he was a critical part of a late heartbreaking goal because he took a bad angle and didn't understand the game state and pressing and was completely out of sync with the team. And then we squandered 2 points at home. And, you know, that was 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks, might have been 4 weeks ago.
But that's not but that's a
So it
different
was a
like
critical failure in the in his position on the field that cost the team points and was heartbreaking so far in the season.
But you know, that's a skill that he should have had as a defensive midfielder too. You know, I'm like the very thing you're talking about, and he doesn't have that skill set.
Well, I'm saying he's been worse further up the field. But I also am hesitant to feed this, because when we were getting a beer after the game on Monday, you're like, oh, Cork and I have this disagreement. I'm like, I don't even. You're just like committed to this idea that you have this CCJ take, which is baffling. Because is your take that
to
you
me,
have
it's more that
he's a
Cork is committed to
striker?
the idea that he's a 6, and I just don't think he's a 6. Like he just does not have the skill set. He does not have the awareness.
But you think
he does
he's
not
a
have the space
striker?
to make.
You think that his play as a second striker and
I
attacking
think he's
player has
further
been
up the
good?
field than a holding midfielder.
So just to clarify, you think you think Peaches thinks that playing further up the field in midfield for CCJ has been better than when he's played further back in the midfield?
I think it suits his skill set more.
Okay, I just want the record to reflect that. The listeners can make their judgments as they will. That is, I guess, the extent of the hot take. Peaches thinks that CCJ is an attacking player. Interesting.
I happen to agree with 3 coaching staffs, you know.
Yeah, it's stellar record there. You know, maybe you can get a gig at Old Trafford.
That's really what I've been vying for this
Yeah.
whole time, you know. Just really trying to play up the Ralph Ragnick connection.
Yeah. Anyway, we're firmly in control of this game with that setup that we put out.
Until
We concede a very similar goal as the Minnesota goal, which I'm getting tired of. This second ball in after a set piece and just not marking a guy and flicking it to the far post. It is such a annoying goal to see again. And can we expect them to get better at that? Is it just still early in the season? Very annoying to concede 2 equalizers to that situation. I don't know. Part of me suspects is like having 2 different center back shapes that we're going with, maybe not providing that sort of continuity yet. Do we think that'll get better over time, or is this like a more inherent problem to our set piece defending?
Whose problem? I mean, the goal is right between Nealis and Long, right? It was.
I think so. Yeah, it was the left and center.
I mean, whose responsibility? It was hard to tell because he was just so isolated on that header.
In my memory,
whose responsibility was that even?
The leftmost center back wasn't really marking anyone, and the guy in the center was closer to marking
it might have been a
someone.
zonal situation too, because it was so far back when.
I mean, yeah, I guess the play was broken.
Struber explicitly called it man-to-man marking after the game on like the system that they run, and that, you know, a lapse in that is what led to the goal. But I think it speaks more to kind of, you know, like you were saying, Brit, the kind of the same theme from the Minnesota goal, where when this team, you know, clears a set piece and then falls asleep, and you know. MLS is good now. I was about to say at this level, and then kind of like couch it in like, oh, I know it's MLS and it's shitty, but like, no, MLS, like, is a good league where you have to be on your toes for the entire 90 minutes, and guys just can't fall asleep. Especially with the way we play after, one clearance goes out. I mean, it's fairly inexcusable as a team, as opposed to, pinpointing any certain player, because it's a problem that goes back to, like, remember in 2020, like in the, the closed door games when we were having our biggest problems, it was falling asleep on throw-ins week after week. There were goals like that. It's just kind of a long-term issue that might speak to just general motivation and getting a winning culture more instilled, which is kind of odd, because if one thing's been kind of striking to me about sort of the in-betweens of this season so far, notwithstanding results, which have obviously been good on the road and bad at home, I think generally when you follow the team and you get a glimpse at team media and stuff like that, there seems to be a really good kind of like team spirit getting built right now that has kind of been missing for a couple of years. And guys really seem to kind of, vibe with each other. And there seems to be, good communication and stuff like that. And the body language is better. And, these set piece lapses and these, little kind of, freak goals that are happening here and there seem like such a contradiction of that I'm not sure, maybe I'm just seeing the wrong things, but, it seems like something that you would hope the team as a whole gets sharper on as the season goes on, but we'll see.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because with both Minnesota and this goal, like the switches that they ran over to the guy who eventually crosses the ball in, they're not that quick. I mean, they're not slow either. It's pretty ordinary play, though. There should have been enough time to really gather themselves, but it wasn't as neither one, I guess, was as galling as like one of the goals we scored against Toronto, where like Long's goal was like just totally unmarked off a set piece. Thankfully, we're not that much of a shambles, but yeah, and I guess you can apply this to the second goal as well, which I think is more of a freak occurrence. But I think I would apply everything you said about, morale and winning mentality just to the fact that there's a miscommunication there between Coronel and Nealis, two players that have been Edwards. Mm-hmm. Two players that have been excellent the last year for us. Wouldn't expect it to happen again. But it's just such a frustrating way to compound on itself here. And part of me thinks that maybe the key here is just putting away the game earlier here. Because I think if we get a second in this game, Montreal starts thinking about the bus ride to the hotel pretty soon. But we just let them stay in it with a couple cheapies way too long.
I mean, I agree with that, but I also just think that, like, that, kind of like what you were saying, is that I had that nagging feeling of that weak mentality of 2020 coming back, or like, we're not mentally strong enough to overcome kind of like small adversity. And, there is a little bit of insecurity maybe in, and I think you said this on Twitter, like that some part of this is on the coaching staff. Maybe it's a symptom of something going on there in terms of motivation. But it is, I think, somewhat alarming that this could be a potential pattern that we're watching.
I think it reminds me more of 2016, I think, than 2020 or 2019.
Or I meant 2021, I think, but yeah.
Where like that 2016 team was still pretty good, but then their problem was dropping points late from winning positions into draws. And then ultimately we're still like second place in the table overall, and still we're a quality and motivated side. So I think that, the team does look to be just in a better sort of morale and shape,
and that's just kind of like my issue with the little debate that we had to start off here, because like I think that betrays the story or detracts from what the story of this game was not that we just like looked like shit the whole time and deserved to lose. Like it was that we, mostly came out strong and did a lot of things right, but it's these weird little hangups and these, kind of little wrinkles in the team's setup that let us down. And it's, especially considering how good we've been on the road and how good we've been at grinding out results. As you saw in the New England game on the road, that we're capable of. Seeing this happen in home games is all the more confounding. And I don't think it speaks to a malaise as much as a just very, weird. I mean, for now, if it goes on for like 2 or 3 months, sure, maybe we're just a shitty team. But for now, I think it remains just a very kind of paradoxical freak thing that we, will hopefully shake off. But if we don't, that'll be the crucible of the season.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the away record too, and that's kind of concerning to me because it's just
the perfect away record.
That's what I mean. But it's like we were able to do it and get it up on these kind of like high pressure situations. Maybe it's like a mental weakness, not in terms of like, oh, everyone's feeling down and gloomy, but like a mental weakness in like, oh, we're put in this in these situations, and then we can't keep up the intensity. We can't keep up the energy when we feel comfortable almost. And it's like paradoxical. Yeah. And I agree. It's like, it's weird and doesn't make sense, but like that's why I have a concern about pattern, because, I think in certain cases of motivation or certain cases of pressure, our team's able to do it. But did we deserve to win? Did we deserve to lose last game? Maybe we did deserve to lose because, consistency is about not making mistakes as much as it is about, just like playing well constantly too, right? A consistent team like makes few mistakes.
Yeah, I mean that sort of scans though with with different young teams that you see that can build up sort of an atmosphere of us against the world. And then when the energy sags a little bit, it's harder to keep that up. Like that's, I think, sounds somewhat familiar as like a pattern that some teams get into. I do feel like this is just sort of a frustrating period at the club in general right now. I don't know. I think just like coming off of 2 kind of semi-fake seasons and like the arena being a little off and like the club being in transition, there's this real feeling that like the club is in transition, like tactically, personnel wise, maybe even like club culture wise a bit, and that there's seems to be a sort of widespread kind of like patience or cautious optimism about this in my feeling, but we're all sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and we keep on getting hints like these away results that feels like the shoe might drop and we might really be back, and then we keep on having these results at home in particular this season. They're saying no, we're still in this weird sort of transitional space, and it feels like we're just kind of stuck here in this second gear, and we can't quite push the clutch all the way in to get in that third gear, which if I let myself go a little bit doomer, that's where the skepticism about like, oh, is Struber just sort of like a relegation scrap guy? Is he used to saving teams rather than pushing to the next one? We've talked about that last year. I don't think we need to really relitigate that and bring it out after this result, but that's kind of the direction my mind wanders in that direction when I think about this. I really hope, and I still believe that the shoe's going to drop one way or the other. I don't think we can stay in this sort of weird paradoxical sort of situation forever. And it still seems more likely that it's going to drop in our favor rather than not. But as I said to start the episode, I'm kind of tired of it right now in terms of the results. It's kind of just a weird feeling. But another thing on Struber that in terms of his management of the game that annoyed me more than really its direct consequence probably should have is that this was a game, I think, again, where about 60, 70 minutes in, we make a couple subs, and often our kind of some of our core starters and guys that we rely on the most are the first guys to come off, which is, I think, something that we got really used to last year with like the shorter preseason and sort of COVID throwing off fitness a bit, and is not unheard of or unprecedented by Struber. But I think in these situations when we're also dropping points and making these bad mistakes, like, my frustration begins to feel that like it seems like every game we play, we start out with a solid spine of how our team looks that runs basically through Long, Nealis, Drew, and then either Klimala or Morgan. Like that's really kind of the spine of the team in a lot of situations. And almost every game we end by disrupting that spine with one of our subs. And it feels like the last 20, 30 minutes of so many of our matches, it feels like we are just sort of like a random collection of players that maybe have not drilled together or such. And we're kind of just like burning time on the clock, which can be fine when you're winning. But when you're not consistently winning, part of me gets annoyed where it's like, oh, we conceded a stupid goal and we've got random permutation of players X out there, you know, like, and so I'm not really excited about our prospects of putting something together here. I would like to see our spine of the team stay on the field for longer in these matches, accepting that Lucinius is making his first start for the team. So it's not crazy that he came out, but it was still just sort of maybe irrationally frustrating for him to see him play so well and then come out so early.
It's got to be hard even for the players to know. And I mean, because we're just laymen looking at this and saying like, oh, I can't even tell what the formation is, which is true in a lot of these situations where he makes these subs like he did the other day with, it was Lucinius and I can't remember who Dylan Nealis came on for, but Dylan Nealis came on. Klimala, okay, yeah,
it was
to kind of switch formation.
Right after the goal?
Yeah, it was
Right.
after the goal.
And he'd already prepared the sub
Yeah.
before.
We
Yeah.
Right.
switched to like, it was like a 3 in the back type situation.
Yeah.
And,
Which was the frustrating part from me.
Yes.
Like, well, and like, you know, if you know, the players aren't even, or like I'm saying, us as just observers are seeing this as kind of weird and jumbled. Like even if the players, even if the team has rehearsed these kind of like situations in training and said, oh, if if the score is X at Y moment of the game, we're going to be shifting to this formation or whatever. Even if they've gone over that before, it still can't be like moving, you know, in any sort of, you know, kind of intuitive way for these guys, especially with the way we play where, you know, things have to move fast. You know, you kind of see things get tentative and guys not being willing to, or not willing or not seeing kind of the openings and not knowing where guys are supposed to be on the field, not knowing where they're supposed to be on the field. There's that. And then there's the other thing that seems to be happening whenever so far in this season. And you saw a little bit of it last year, but it's been more striking this season at these home games where we're down and trying to chase something, is that we're throwing the center backs up to just lump long balls. And it's like, I'm certainly not above that. I mean, I've staked out my ethos a little bit on this show and you know, in person, that we're definitely not above that sort of stuff, but going to it in like the 75th, 80th minute with like both center backs, it's just so kind of cheap, man. Like we should be making a little bit more of an effort before
Feels a
resorting
little
to that.
desperate.
Yeah.
It felt like the one time where we like did that really vividly was it was like a
Aaron Long.
no well yes, but an away
Long
game.
is decent at it, but
Right,
like,
but
yeah.
it was like an away game in Montreal. We lost like 4-0. This is like 2020, maybe.
Does anyone remember it working?
That's the thing is like it. I mean, it was desperation, and it just looked like sad, and we obviously didn't succeed. But
It's
it
like a
felt like
hopeful,
that.
yeah.
But we were at home. It just felt. I don't
always
know.
feel like it
it's
makes
so
us a little
counter-
worse though, because we're such a rhythm and like system team when we're at our best that it seems like so many times where like a center back will get up there and have the ball, and then it's like, oh fuck, what do we do now? And I don't know, you know. Believe me, I love seeing the goalkeeper go up at the very end of the game. That's exciting as fuck. But like, yeah, especially in week 5 of the season or whatever, like, yes, all the points count the same. But part of me is like, God, don't we want to get some reps in this kind of situation?
Or
you know?
also, like, at this point, you could have subbed on the striker. Like,
yeah,
right, like-
or it's, and I was reminded that we did this through that Aaron Long video that the team put out about his comeback from injury. He mentioned when he was describing that game at Philadelphia that's what he was doing when he got that injury, which, you know, total freak accident. I don't mean to but I was like, oh God, I forgot that was the context there. So I feel like it's just given me an even worse taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Also like you said this, and it's not a big deal. Like Luquinhas, like having load management, that makes sense. He just got here, he hadn't played for a while, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that just like rubs me the wrong way is that it feels like so calculated the way that he says it, or maybe just because he's Austrian, I'm being like racist to Austrians, but which you can't be, I guess. But it just felt very calculated to like he had this game plan of making these subs or making this formation change, and it doesn't really feel flexible with the way that the game was, especially because we had just conceded. We were obviously dominating the midfield so strongly, and to me, like, if I'm reading it into too much, which obviously this is my season where I'm doing that.
this season
exactly. Is if I'm reading into it too much, that's like, it shows to me that there's a little bit of tactical inflexibility, and it reminds me of like when we were clamoring back in the days for infinite game theory, and remember that, and it's like it feels like a little bit of a overcorrection, of course, in that way.
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing, we were also recording this on the day that the Dodgers pulled a pitcher throwing a perfect game in 7 innings with less than 80 pitches. So maybe this is just the new sports science reality of our world.
Wait, the Dodgers did that?
Yeah. So we're going to go break into Hanover and destroy all of the FBI machines that they monitor their fluoride levels with the sports bras.
This also makes me against the Todd Bowley bid for the Chelsea takeover, if that happened then.
Is that the guy who owns the Dodgers?
Yeah.
Well, I think I would have just preferred that we have more of a like for Luquinhas coming in, because the whole reconfiguration of like adding Nealis in and then Fletcher and all this stuff, and just having it's like the disruption in shape and plan that was more frustrating.
I hate changing shape. Don't even get me fucking started on 5 subs maybe becoming permanent. But pushing that aside, I don't like subs being used like an aggressive, like, oh, I'm going to put this guy on in like the 55th minute and then just, expect him to change. Like, I'm getting off on a tangent there too, but like when you change your formation with only like 10, 15 minutes left, you're only you can't expect more than maybe like 2 or 3 possessions that you'll have where like, the stars will align and everything that you hope that formation shape will put into place happens. Whereas like, I just think that's so stupid compared to the way you drill a team to approach an entire 90 minutes.
Yeah,
to shift it for just like the last 10 minutes when you can't even guarantee you're going to have moments to show what that new shape gives you. It's just even if it wasn't the Red Bulls, any fucking team, it's stupid to me, but go ahead.
Yeah. Substitutions are still really all about that boy's got that dog in him.
Yeah. That he's just
like
he's 100%
gonna fight
to get one. Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's
just some guy on fresh legs who's gonna jump to something that another team's late.
And
on.
I feel like the best. I'm trying to even think of a legendary sub appearance, and I can't even. I'm sure there's some, but I feel like the best of them is. I cannot even begin to understand what that means, but the best instances of those are when you see something extremely specific that you want to exploit. And I feel like the meta maybe among coaches now is sort of, to have this scripted plan or things, or like, and sort of is a little bit more hopeful of like, oh yeah, we'll make this adjustment and like in theory it should lead to this. And then, you get the ball 4 times to really try it. And then the guy muffs his first touch of the game because it's his first touch of the game, and it's like, great, well, I'm glad that we totally changed our defensive shape for this,
Yeah.
But again, this, like, I think as we've all said, it's like, this is not why we lost on Sunday or Saturday, but it's
like befuddling because there's no thought process behind it. Well, what are we achieving by changing this formation that we weren't achieving before?
Yeah.
And like, what are we good at in that formation, or that you want that you weren't seeing?
It's unnecessarily deflating to make it so that like the last 15 or 20 minutes of the game feel like they're just a waste.
But I also feel like that the change in system like totally took out. I mean, you might agree with me, but like totally took out our lethality, because what we were doing before that was destroying the midfield and kind of playing it up. And what we switched to 3 in the back, try to play up wide. Is that the goal? I don't really know what's going on, right?
I think it's probably to create overloads wide, that he thinks having like, that bringing Dylan Nealis on to have like a wing back and Morgan and like Omir Fernandez kind of creating, layers of attacks down the wing. But like when none of them are all that potent at doing that, it doesn't matter if you send them in numbers. Like, I thought Morgan had, I think it seems to be kind of a consensus that Morgan had probably his roughest game in a Red Bulls kit so far in this one. And I don't think it was because I never think it's because of players just like not trying or something. Like, first of all, players just have their bad days. And secondly, there was a lot of talk before the game, in the week before the game, especially about what his true position is, if there is such a thing. And him talking about how he prefers to play in a more, straightforward attacking role as opposed to wingback, where Struber has put him mostly in these road games. And I think you saw today a little bit of maybe vindication for Struber, deploying him in some of the wingback roles and just the general kind of 3-5-man backline from the start formations, because Morgan, when he's kind of more ahead of the ball and, kind of getting to use the ball more often and be kind of the focal point, because it's not even, I said it in the last episode about the New England game, that Omir Fernandez, even if you put him in that central role behind the strikers, he's really not a 10. He's not really a guy who facilitates play and puts through balls in or anything. And in that case, Morgan became kind of the guy who was playing, point guard, if you want to use a dirty other sport metaphor, in a lot of our possessions. And it doesn't really suit him. He gets his action off of exploiting space, not manipulating space. Most of his possessions just kind of ended with him, maybe breaking to the end line, but not having enough kind of juice to, have a dangerous cross to put in, and, ended up being, all kind of toothless. And I think when he's playing from that wing back role, there's more players in front of him who are kind of moving the defense out of place and just making it more intuitive. Maybe kind of to use, to compare to Alex Muil back in the day. The best of Alex Muil we saw on the offensive side of the ball was when kind of the decision was made up for him and he just kind of had to burst into space and use kind of his, very kind of precise, incisive, in Morgan's case, more precise kind of technique to do damage once he had that opening in front of him. And when he's playing further up the field and sort of expected to kind of instigate play, that doesn't happen.
Yes, but how much space did Morgan lose because CCJ was out of position? Sam, I owe you. I'm gonna send you a Venmo thing for that talking point.
There you go.
Okay, the reason I even brought it up in the first place is because I knew, I didn't even know you had those opinions, but I'm not surprised. Like, it's just very.
I'm just fed up with CCJ, man. That's how I feel.
Yeah, right.
This is, but sort of like, I don't know. I feel like it was forced into becoming lore that like you uniquely disliked Daniel Royer when like nobody, it's not like everyone else was a Daniel Royer stan. I feel like this is just a repeat of this phenomenon.
You just need
like,
somebody
sure,
else.
Go ahead.
We've hated thing.
Well, no, I'm like, that's my thing. I just hate popularly frustrating players.
I mean, I only brought it up because I had a thought about, like, I think that this is a good example. Like, good for Omir scoring. However, deflection, whatever. But I thought this was one, you guys mentioned a lot last season that like he's a good player, but he's a little out of his depth for what he's put on to accomplish. And it felt like that was pretty, it felt more obvious this weekend than it had in a while. So like one of my thoughts was like, Amaya can play up further up the field. He does enjoy playing further up the field than where he's currently assigned. If we had a game where we could just like tinker with the midfield a little bit, I would love to see him in a more forward position, kind of where Omir's currently positioned, where he could do that kind of like quote unquote like point guarding, where he could give Morgan more options on the wing, maybe give Klimala the service that he's like desperately looking for, because he isn't getting enough up there to even have like a criticism of him.
That's true.
Like to have the criticism that people are having of him right now, if that makes sense. But I like the idea of having Amaya maybe put up for a little more forward and then having CCJ play alongside Drew and just seeing what that like midfield trio would look like and how it would impact our other three big offensive
Attackers,
players who like honestly should get more than one goal out of a Montreal home game.
Based on how Struber seems to be setting up those formations and how he wants them to look, I would think that Amaya and then Caceres behind him would look even better than what we're seeing with Omir in that role. Again, goal notwithstanding.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like, I was taking the piss a little bit, but I do think that if Amaya were behind Morgan when he's playing 10, like Amaya will be able to carry the ball better and draw attention away from Morgan, who might be opened up to make a play. We don't know, like we haven't seen necessarily that yet in this formation, in this four in the back formation. So like, I think there's still a lot of unknowns, a lot of things to uncover. But like we're saying about this season, like it could go one of two ways. Like last year it went the other way, despite all the good signs we had. So that's just why I'm cautious. I think this season is like, I've been burned,
My fear is that we got a lot of good players. We've made a lot of improvements from last year, but like the concern that always bothered me was that like the disconnect between our deep midfield center back, our defensive half really, and the offensive players who felt stranded last year. This is much less of the case, but still not enough, I think, production or even like, goals at home. I mean, away is a different story, obviously. So it's really hard to tell. And, as Brit, you're saying, it's so early, we don't know what, where the shoe's going to drop.
That's true.
But it's just like, I am really concerned like about like having those same problems kind of seep into 2022.
Right. And I just think that what you're saying is that about, I just lost my train of thought.
I think that Omir benefited massively from Lucchinius being on the pitch as well and holding and carrying the ball a little bit more, which allowed him to combine a little bit more, which is natural. Now, maybe that's a function of fatigue or just the team sort of losing control of the game later on. That happened in parallel. We'll see. But I do think Cork's point about Morgan maybe being better as a wingback is well taken and is interesting because so far I've been sort of frustrated with the more wingback, five in the back formation because it seemed to be indicative of Stuber trying to play wide, which I feel like for a month or so now has really not borne as much fruit as just trying to do the 4-4-2 and play directly. But I do think that Morgan actually was most successful in that wide back position, wing back position, when we were also still trying to play very vertically through that. And he was able to kind of exploit that space in between both the midfield and the back line, but also sort of between the widest player in the opponent's midfield or their fullback and their more central players. And I think recently we've been playing wide with the wing backs, but it seems like Morgan's been staying on the sideline the whole time and sort of more isolated. It might be a function of how other teams are playing. It might be a function of how we are playing, but he's not trying to manipulate that same kind of space, or he's not been able to. And I think in this game, we are also just looked so much better, so much more fluid and intuitive on an individual level when we're cutting through that team's vertically. Like it looked like we were creating so much indecision among Montreal's players when either Drew or Lucchinius had the ball at their feet and kind of driving forward, and whether or not he executed on it, CCJ too. And I think we should be trying to create more of these situations.
Our goal.
Because that's a good example. I mean, like if you're going to play a sort of like blue collar, like punchy in the nose form of soccer, like as we kind of are, like that is a great exemplar of a goal of like just force it again through forcing Montreal to be all over the place there. Whereas like this vision of like whatever sort of overloads we're doing on the outside is just really not come through yet. Like, yeah, sure, don't give up on it. Don't want if you think it's really key. But so far, it's been so much less successful at carving teams up through the middle. And maybe that's a reflection of how the league has developed too, where the league has sort of recruited and developed wider players in the last 10 years. but maybe it has a bit of a softer underbelly right now.
I think you just mentioned Luquinhas. I don't think we really talked enough maybe about what he brought to the game in this. But, obviously, I think the difference in the way that we carved up Montreal's midfield, maybe they're not the best midfield anyway, but I noticed just that the way that Luquinhas moves changes the way that everyone else moves around him, which, creates chances in itself. And, like Luquinhas being so dynamic and moving off the ball and having other people move off the ball has created so many of those impromptu overloads for us in the midfield. And that's how we won so many of those interceptions, and we were able to get those transitional moments. And it's even more frustrating that we just blew all of that up to go 3 in the back. But, Luquinhas is so good at that I agree. Maybe watching Morgan in a wingback role with a type of Luquinhas who can come in, or even Omir, who, as we're saying, is not really that wide player. He's more of an undercutting kind of inverted winger, maybe. We'll see different dynamics just because of the way Luquinhas plays. But that also, it causes me concern for one player to be such a linchpin if this is what our plan is moving forward to.
Yeah, I think if done right, hopefully maybe it just makes it so that if Luquinhas has a little bit more gravity and attracts defenders and attention a little bit, it will make us more of a multi-headed beast where Morgan will have more space, Patrick will have more space, Omir will have more space. Right now, maybe we're a little bit too predictable, trying to play to Morgan and then going from Morgan to Klimala. That said, it's also still been a pretty small sample size, and I'm more encouraged than not by how good Luquinhas looked in this first start. Maybe this is a good transition though into anticipating Dallas on the weekend, in figuring with Luquinhas being presumably match fit, with Frankie being back from suspension, right? He didn't get an additional suspension, did he?
No.
Okay. And are there any other injury concerns to think? I mean, Caden Clark, I don't know. Who cares?
Struber said that he was just going to miss this game and then be back.
Okay.
By the way, Seattle is up on City in Champions League.
Nice. How long is Reyes out for? I just thought of this weekend. I was we've been playing this entire time without Andre Reyes.
It was hard to tell. When I was looking into it for OAM, I couldn't quite figure out what time frame they were talking about, because he got hurt on his own in Colombia during the off season, and then they gave a 2 to 4 month time frame on his injury, but when that started was not entirely clear. But I'm expecting that Reyes should start winding back into the picture in maybe about a month or so.
Yeah, because I guess the other thing I heard about his type of bone break is that you can put literally no weight on that foot at all.
So it'll be uphill getting back to fitness.
Yeah, so I don't even know if he can be on the bike, but he can't kick a ball with it. He can't do anything. So I've been kind of assuming I haven't been waiting on him. I think, they'll make an announcement eventually, but until then, I'm assuming he's out.
Well, I just had the fleeting thought this weekend. I was we've been doing this without Reyes. Yeah. That's exciting.
Good problem to have. Mm-hmm. But everyone's fit other than that, right? And everyone's available for selection. There aren't any weird, if there's a U14 tournament this week, we might be in luck because we're playing Dallas. So their whole team will probably be picked to go on it. But I mean, are we looking at Dallas's squad? It's just palm call,
nice
whatever.
tidy football, but we'll do them.
Exactly.
It should really be
at home.
The mindset.
It's a good team to come in at this moment. I think just nice.
I mean, so is Montreal.
PES. Well, Montreal have a little bit more bastards, but just even more in a dumber, higher level way. FC Dallas have that nice, generic PES squad, generic stadium, generic coach, regen players,
generic logo.
Exactly.
I remember I'm pretty sure this is the last game they played at RBA. It was during the Shield year in 2018. With probably one of the high water marks of that season, where we went down to 10 men in the first half and still beat them 3-0.
Yeah. That was amazing.
It would be nice to have a repeat of that. It doesn't even have to be that bombastic.
Did they sell Cacho Pepe this season? Whatever his name is. Yeah.
Cadre Pepe.
Cacio e Pepe.
Cacio e Pepe.
Is that
yeah.
Portuguese or something that you're trying to pronounce it like?
No, it's a pasta dish.
No, okay. I thought you were saying like Ricciardo Pepe
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah,
but
they sold him to some, I don't know, Luxembourgish club or something. But that's a guy who basically never existed because his entire MLS career was COVID.
Yeah,
that's
really.
Did anyone ever see him play?
No.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. They sold him to Bielefeld is where they sold him. But yeah, I mean, like, as I just went on to spiel about, I love to see us play 4-4-2 rather than 5 at the back. But at this point, I assume we'll do 5 at the back. It seems like Edwards maybe has won that right center back spot over Nealis.
Danielis.
Yeah,
Danielis.
true. Danielis.
Daniel is a river in Egypt.
Well, we
And-
started 4 in the back against
Did we? It's hard. My memory is.
Montreal. Yeah, we started 4 in the back against Montreal, so we might
Yeah.
start again 4 in the back.
I would love
wasn't
that.
the problem. Yeah.
I
It is a Western Conference team. I hope he realizes like this is a little bit lower stakes game. I don't know if he knows that about this league.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, also, I think Struber is genuine when he talks about going to like New England and wanting to like nick points and wanting to compete anywhere. So he should at least be able to apply that here. But I think I would like to see Frankie and Drew back, see Luquinhas up front in front of them, and then Morgan on the right wing back. I guess Tolkien the left wing back, and then I mean, how many players does that leave? Does that Klimala and then one more? Or is that it?
Kamala and 2 more because you have two
Center back.
10s, which, well, Luquinhas is going to be one of the 10s. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then, it's probably Omir, but maybe we see a return of the kind of Christmas tree, or not Christmas tree, it's the reverse fucking, I guess there's not a
3-4-2-1.
there's not a metaphor for it, but whatever we were doing in New England with Klimala and Barlow in front of Omir, maybe we see a repeat of that with maybe Fletcher instead of Barlow and Luquinhas instead of Omir, which could be pretty dandy, but we'll have to see if it actually gets rolled out.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I like that. I like the idea of that more than the dual 10s that Struber has been doing with the 5 3-man back lines in other games.
I wouldn't mind seeing more of Omir and Luquinhas on the field at the same time too. But I think, yeah, I mean, going back to my complaining about the substitutions, I think another thing that's annoying is that it seems like our forward situation on the field is particularly ramshackle. Like we're always taking off Klimala or putting him on, or the result is a weird combination of like Barlow and maybe like somebody like CCJ or Morgan being like the point of attack.
Yeah.
And it's never like trying, for instance, Klimala and Fletcher at the same time with the rest of the spine of the field team intact. It's never like putting a like for like of Barlow in for like Klimala with Fletcher at the same time. It's always one other change. So yeah, like just Fletcher and Klimala starting 2 forwards at the top. That could be, if nothing else, scientifically interesting too.
I mean, that's, I'm going to have a pipe dream line up here. But I would like to see Fletcher, Klimala, and then behind them, I'd like to see Morgan in another game. I think as like the 2 10s, do Luquinhas and Morgan behind them, and then do Drew and Amaya, and then do a 4-man backline of Tolkien, Long, I guess Nealis, and Tom Edwards as right back maybe, and in the back 4. Maybe we'll see that. We might not. Probably not. But
Yeah, I've sold. That would be my preferred too.
well, like that's what I want to see. Like I'd love to see that team once, but
Yeah.
I would prefer to start, I think, with 2 strikers, and one because I think Patrick, as he's been struggling a bit, has been dropping back a bit to try to just contribute more in the buildup of play, and having another striker could maybe assist with that and get him more into the flow of the game. But then 2, also, if it doesn't really work, I think I would prefer to take off a striker or drop the striker further back into that 2-10 role. And I think 2-10's role. And I think that would maybe assist us to get us moving more and getting more fluid. Whereas I think oftentimes if we're chasing a game or we've kind of lost control of the game and then we take away that midfield body and add a striker, now we've just got two guys who are running away from the ball and lost a bit of direction in the transition. And again, just sort of burns minutes of the game away. But I'll stop myself there because we're getting pretty down into the contingency and conditional statements here. I hope and expect to win still on Saturday. And I think the team will feel the same way. I don't know. How do you feel about Saturday against FC Dallas at home?
I feel bad because the stakes are a little too low. You know, I feel like we might not get up for it, and that might be a bad thing. I don't want that to happen, obviously. I'd like us to win 1-0, but I worry that we might lose 1-0. But my prediction is that we're going to win 1-0.
I think we need to score 2 goals. I mean, just think for the sake of everyone's confidence in the attack, just get a couple early ones. I think, that it would just, I think, be a nice little boost given the last few games. If we score 2, we win. So I'm going to go 2-1.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a good chance that it's been once the right formation is out on the field, once there's, it might just be a broken clock situation with Struber tinkering so much, but once there is a setup that actually flows out there on the field, the floodgates might really open, considering, how much the team has struggled to score at home so far. And especially against a team like Dallas and still with, that 2018 result at home in the back of my mind, I think if we get 1 and then definitely if we get 2, I think there's more coming after that. So I'll go ahead and say I'll be bullish, to use the pun, and then say 4-1.
Ooh.
A 4-1 result to the Metro.
Nice. And I will say, I co-signed this cautious optimism and maybe not so cautious optimism, but I will say, acknowledge that Dallas actually have a pretty good record right now, but it changes nothing for me. I still expect us to beat them.
Western Conference is the fucking second division of the United States.
We're also 5 games in,
Yeah.
Right. Also, the most annoying people on earth are into Dallas now.
Yeah.
So,
Brit, I just want to say I really hope this game was a wake-up call.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think this had less potential to be a late wake-up call than
The last wake-up call?
Than Columbus, actually. Yeah, but I hope so. I mean, I do think if we were to drop points again on Saturday, I think the stakes are not that low. Be pretty awkward, be pretty uncomfortable situation. But I don't think we will drop points. I think we'll come back, and earlier in the day, in the chat, I said 3-1 Red Bulls. Has spotted, I believe, Julia Garner on the streets of New York. So boom, I don't know if she counts as a character actor, but
if you listeners out there, if you ever encounter a celebrity on the streets, preferably kind of
B-list.
a C
minus,
B C-list level, HBO bit part actor type level. We're not talking about, even though I think I saw, well, actually that's too dark, but anyway, if you ever see any type of public figure like this on the street during your day across the tri-state metropolitan area, please let us know so that we can spread the good omen upon the Red Bulls for the weekend.
Tag us on Twitter,
it's a
View
system.
from 202.
Yeah.
Contact at viewfrom202.com.
Mm-hmm.
and don't no photo. Photo's not necessary.
No, not at all.
Just the name.
It's just like Gawker Stalker, but for soccer. It's the Gawker Soccer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Hey.
Ooh. Sign this man up.
There you go. Hey now.
Send your tips in as always. No photos allowed. Don't talk to them either. Don't
Just send us a name. And
yeah,
that's it.
That's it.
And
But tell
date.
the truth, obviously. Don't. If you lie, then we're fucked.
If it's too famous, bad omens too.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
We trust your judgment. It's all in your hands, listeners. If you fuck up, we're gonna get relegated. Okay. Well, with that, we'll see you next week.
It's Alex!